want to do something a little bit different just to start off. My friend Jenny did a selfie, but I want to do a binding. So it's kind of a selfie with bind. So hold on. All right, you guys go to that. I'll post that later, so thank you very much. So thanks for coming here on Friday afternoon. I'm going to talk to you guys about how when you get smarter, you'll actually make less money. And I know that sounds very weird, but over the years, that happened to me. And so before I kind of dive into it, I just want to give you kind of a little context, a little bit about me. I have a lovely family. My kids drive me absolutely nuts, and I'm a good salesman because my wife's good looking. So. I went to an Ironman. It took me 16 hours and 20 minutes. I'm still getting over the pain from 12 years ago. And I race cars all over the country, just to give you a little context. And one of the cool things is NSYNC is very instrumental to everything that I do. And I'm going to tell you why. When I was growing up, one of my friends looked just like Justin. I mean, identical. We would get in all the bars free, and girls would come up to us, and we'd leverage that. So I was like, I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to design a website. And so I designed a website. I won't say the name, but I'll list it out up here. And it got widely popular in the late 90s. And so I created a fake band, fake tour, fake everything. And that's how I got started. People started reaching out to me to design websites since they liked my fake band website. And even when I was doing websites, my first client went to me and said, can you send me an invoice? And I actually had to look it up. Google wasn't even around. And so if you guys are just getting started, don't worry, I didn't even know what an invoice was. So 12 years ago, I founded a company called Solar Velocity. I hired an employee and hired a bunch of other ones. We worked with some really cool clients over the years, designed a lot of cool websites. I was involved on over 2,000 website projects. So I'm going to tell you where we lost money when we got smarter in a second. And we eventually wound up selling the agency a couple years ago, but time flies by. This whole presentation will be on my website /Wordcamp. And tweet me, hit me up on Facebook. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys and see how I can help you out. And I got a special gift on the website for you guys as well. It's a free tip, free video that you guys can use, and it will make a difference in your agency or business right away. So what if I told you you could work a lot less and make a lot more profit? Right? Everybody wants that. So probably all the clients right now are probably draining you, and you're probably like, do I really want to do this? I'm going to tell you, don't worry about it. When I got my first website, I charged by the project, and I lost a ton of money. So then what did I do? I actually went to charging by the hour. And I did that for a number of different years. And I realized I was actually starting to lose money when I did that. So the common debate everybody always has is, should I charge by the hour or should I charge by the project? So how many people charge by the hour? All right, half of you. And the other half, I assume, by the project? And the other ones are shy to raise their hand. Both? Okay, great. Milestones? Okay, great. Value, yeah. Good one, Gene. So for half of my agency life, we charged by the hour. And what I started realizing is as we were growing the business and we were selling these websites, we started not making as much profit. We were taking in a lot, and our top line revenue was growing, but we were making a whole lot less. And I knew there had to be a better way. And so if you're charging by the hour, you're actually going to lose profit. Now, I'm not saying you're going to lose money, because I know why you went to charging by the hour, just because you were like, I don't want to put all the time into scoping out this project. I don't really have the experience to know what's going on when I'm bidding this project. So let me just take the easy route, and I'm going to charge hourly. And by the time I, bump up the hourly rate a little bit, I'm going to make some money. But then you're going to run into that infamous ceiling, right? So you're going to cap out. So let's say there's only 40 hours in the week, or you're like me or Gene or anybody I know, you work 80, 90 hours a week sometimes. And then that's just in delivering the work. That doesn't even count the sales and all the other stuff that you need to do. So what can you do? So let's say someone comes to you for a WordPress website, and you do it, and it takes you, you spit it out at 100 hours, and you're charging $50 an hour. But then over time, don't you get faster and quicker? Do you think when I did the 2000th website, do you think I was a lot more efficient and quicker? So what happens over time is you actually get penalized, right? So you actually make less, because if you're charging by the hour, and I'll get to the people that kind of bump up their hours, I'll tell you how to bump them up even more to make even a bigger difference, but you get penalized. So, Gene and I listen to the same podcast, and if I told Gene I would plug him, so Leaders in the Trenches, check it out later on, but it's all for people like you and people growing. But we were listening to a podcast, and this one guy was talking about the locksmith. And this happened to me when I was designing websites. So when he first started out, he would fumble around and try to break into people's houses for them, right, legally. And, it'd take him 2 hours to break in, and then he would say it's $200. And they'd be more than happy because they saw this guy struggling, just like me doing my first website. I didn't know the right questions to ask. I didn't know the timeline. I didn't know all the gotchas that was going to happen. And then as he got faster and faster, he would get in, break in someone's house in 5 minutes. And he'd go, it's $200. And then people were like, $200? It took 5 minutes. But they didn't see all the time that it took to build up. And I'll show you how to go through that as well. So one of the things, does anybody know what fully burdened rate is? No? Good, you're in the right place then. So what it is kind of your final cost of what you need to charge, at least at a minimum, to break even. And before we actually did this calculation, we were losing money on 60% of our projects. I was just lucky 40% were highly profitable. So what it is you take your employee's hourly wage, multiply that by the number of hours that they can actually work in a year, and then add that to all of your expenses, from health insurance, everything. And even if you're working by yourself, you guys need to do this and figure out what's the bottom line, and then how much profit can I make? And then you divide that by those hours. And when you do that, so let's assume the example that we just went through, charging $50 an hour. When you actually run these numbers, this, assuming 2 employees at $50,000 each and $50,000 for expenses, your bottom line is $62.50 or $62.60. Sorry, 10 cents. But now you're losing money. So a lot of people don't know what to charge by the hour, and that's the baseline, right? So I heard a couple people say they do both, which is good. You need to kind of go back and forth, and I'll show you how. And then the other thing that we would always look at is, what's the effective rate? Does anybody know what the effective rate is? Good, you're in the right room. So it's the amount of hours that you work in or the amount of money that you make in a certain time, by the amount of hours. And so what you want to do is you want to make it where you're making at least 50% on your effective rate. And I was able to do 50 to 500% effective rate. And it's all about selling on value of the 3 I's that I'll cover with you guys in a second. But it made me go from $50 an hour to $500 an hour most of the time. And I'll go through that. So let's go by the numbers. So let's say you charge $100 an hour, you have 40 hours in a week that you guys work, you make $4,000 per employee, and you have 5 employees. So if you increase your effective rate by 50%, you're going to make a lot more money. And you can do the math on, if it's just you as well. But these are huge numbers. I mean, $40,000 a month, assuming 5 employees, if you can raise those effective rates. So, charging by the hour, it's going to penalize you for your experience that you guys do. It's going to cripple your billing potential that you guys can earn because there's only so much time in the day. And it's going to lower productivity. Think about it, if you have employees and they have to do a specific task and they know they have to get these amount of things done, they're going to probably just take that amount of time. And there's opportunity where you can bonus them later on if you guys are thinking of going to the next level and hiring people. So let's go through how. So I talked a lot about kind of the 3 I's. And it all starts in the very beginning when you first start talking with the client, of identifying what's the biggest issue that they have that you guys can solve, right? And then you figure out, what's the impact on their business of that issue. So let's say you identify that they have this, they're not driving enough traffic to their website, and it's costing them $100,000 a month. And you go to them, well, is that important to you? Oh yeah, my competition is starting to get that. Now you can leverage that, and you start assigning a value to the 3 I's, where now you're changing that conversation, and you're making a major difference. So the key is value, and you have to put that together. One of the stories that I always tell, Lotus Cars came to us and to design a website. And we went to them, and everybody else started talking to them, saying, oh, we can design the best website. Here's some of the websites that we've designed. Well, we started asking the questions, what's the biggest impact? Why do we want to do this? What's the issue? How important is it to you? And we established something totally different of what they needed, and we were able to deliver that to them with the value, and it really separated us from everybody else. And then we could leverage that for our experience. So if you think about it, the most savvy buyers buy on value, not the best price. So a lot of times, until you calculate the value that you're actually providing, it's very hard in order to figure out, what can I charge? I mean, literally, we would go from charging $500 a website for our first website, all the way to probably the very end, probably close to $200,000. And then probably the last 2 years, we kept jumping up and up and up. And literally, it went from like a $5,000 website. We're like, well, let's see if we can get $20,000 because we're solving such a big issue. So let's say you're solving that $100,000 pain that they have every month, and you come at them with a $1,000 website. They're going to be like, hey, you don't get the value. You don't get my problem. You can't solve my $100,000 issue, which is $1 million problem over a year with $1,000. But if you come to them with a lot bigger value and sell that, it makes all the difference. One of the ideas that we would always use as well is calculate the lifetime value of their customer. And this equation is basically 3 questions that you can ask. You ask the customer or the prospect and say, what's the average spend that your customer spends with you? And then how often a year do they buy from you? And then what's the lifetime that they're with you? When you multiply all that together, it gives you the lifetime value. So for example, let's say someone says, well, my customer spends an average spend of $1,000 with me. And they buy from me twice a year, and they're usually with me for 5 years. Okay? So 1,000 times 2, 2,000 times 5 is 10,000. So it's a lifetime value of 10,000. Then you can say, well, the website, the WordPress website I'm designing right now, I'm going to drive a ton of traffic, I'm going to build it where it captures leads, I'm going to nurture it, I'm going to do all the right things, and I think I can get you at least 10 qualified leads a month. And then I would actually tell them and say, well, out of those, how many do you think you would qualify? Or how many do you think you can close? Be like, I can close half, which is a bad number, but we'll stick with half. And so, great, you can close 5 new opportunities, and the lifetime value for each is 10,000. That's 50,000 it's worth for you. And so then I could charge on value. So I didn't have to come at them and explain to them why I'm only charging $5,000. And I could charge a lot more. So here's what I would do, is obviously I would start with the 3 I's, right? Identify the one major pain, that one major issue that they have, and find out how important and what's the impact on their business. I would look back at similar projects. How many people track all their hours? Like to the T. Okay. Remember 60%? That was me. We tracked some of the hours. If you're not tracking all your hours, everything I'm showing you right now is not going to work. Because you're not going to know kind of the profit leaks of where all these hours are actually going. So if you start tracking the amount of time, then you can look back and now you have a track record. So now you don't have to track by the hour anymore. You can look at a project and say, I spent 100 hours last time on that, and I'm going to be even more efficient. So I at least need to charge 100 hours versus I think it's going to take 50 hours. Anytime you think, you're assuming wrong. Promise you, I lost a ton of money on that. So track all your hours, and then you'll have a good baseline where you guys can go back and you can really learn from it. And then you can get those huge effective rates where you're making $500 an hour. Because Gene worked with me, and we would go in, we would deliver, we could deliver a cost as low as $10,000 for a basic website. But most of the time we charge $100,000 for it. So that was a huge profit. But we could do that because we sold on value, we understand that issue, and then we understood what it actually took. But then even if I was talking to someone that was even a little bit lower, I could do a website for $15,000 if I wanted. But until I knew that baseline, I couldn't do anything. The other thing I would do is I'd always pad the hours for profit. So whatever it would take, a lot of people would just say, oh, it's going to take 100 hours. They charge 100 hours. I would charge 125 hours. So you got to pad for profit. And then I would pad for the oh shit stuff coming up that all happens. And if you can deliver even more effectively, great. But that was a 50% markup. And I wasn't doing this just to make more money. I was doing it because I knew there was going to be things like scope creep that I couldn't avoid. And all of this stuff that we all enjoy working with our lovely clients. And then if you can sell on value, I can't stress that enough. That's everything. That's how you sell the $100,000 websites. Or the $10,000, depending on whatever level you're at now. And if you understand the value that you're providing, it's that much easier. And it's cool. And then you actually have to measure it with them. Like, you guys are not measuring what you're doing for your clients after the fact. You guys are missing out. And then the other thing, too, is we'd always look for ways to be more effective. And we would bonus our employees. We would bonus the contractors that we work with to deliver it quicker. Because then we could share in the profit. We could share in delivering this a little quicker. And another thing, too, is we'd always make sure, remember, like the locksmith? Even if we're delivering it super quick, we always made it look like we were still scrambling around. Because you don't want to deliver a $100,000 website and look like you didn't break a sweat. So we'd always kind of fumble around and make it look a little harder than it was. That's the secret. Yes? Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. Yeah, it's per client, and there's always that kind of PIA fee in there. Yeah, she asked, if a client asks for something that only takes 2 hours and you deliver it within 2 hours, they're always going to expect that. So a lot of times I would basically take the tack of kind of going, I would never tell them how many hours it would take. And I'd say, great, we can do that, and if we wanted to give that to them for free or whatever, I would say, great, this is going to take a couple days in order to do this. And then we would do it on our test servers, and then we'd push it out and say, it's all done. Great question. What other questions? I wanted to keep this more of a QA versus me just preach the world on what to do. But do you guys get it on charging by, the hour can actually cost you guys a lot of time? Yeah, question.
So one of the factors
Yeah, so one of the things that we did was we would charge for discovery in order to get in there. And we were very detailed on our proposal. If you go to the site, I have a free video that will walk you through how we went and did our proposal. I never spent over 15 minutes on a proposal. And so, yeah, I never spent over 15 minutes on a proposal. We had it down as a systematic approach. And so over time, as you're building this monster template. A lot of people just use all these templates all over the place. And then they pull a piece from here and pull a piece from here. But what we would do is put it all in one master. And then when we were going through with the client, and we would build it with the client, and then we would send it over. Even when it came to highly customized, like we built everything for LegalZoom, like that, the whole website, everything. And I didn't spend over 15 minutes on that proposal. But what we did do is on the scope, we would charge on a scope. And we would do a small fee in order to understand that, and I'd say to them, hey, look, we don't know what it's going to take, but we need to do a project discovery and charge for that. And then from that, you're going to have a deliverables of what needs to happen. And you can use us, or you don't have to use us. But almost every time they use us.
So you don't do the discovery and the scope and possibly have the same as the two separate documents?
Correct. Yeah, and the biggest thing about the discovery is now you're turning that prospect to a customer. And there's a certain thing that happens, in the psyche of going, I just turned this prospect to a customer, now they trust me a little bit more. And then you're building it with them. Yeah, every project we did, we measured. And so we had a debrief after every one of them. And so we looked at what we thought it would take, because everything was based on hours, but then we had it. And then we would say, okay, well, wow, we only made 10% profit on that, and our effective rate was nothing. And then the next project, the key is learning and not making the same mistake over and over again. And I did that probably for 6 years. I made the same mistake over and over. And I kept seeing our top line revenue grow, but then I was making less money. I was like, how is that? I need to pay for my race car. Yes. Yes. So then I go back of, one of the biggest things that I would always do in the very beginning is I say, if you're going to work with us in 12 months, what would you treat as a success on this project? And I'd get them to lay it out. And then we just keep measuring that. And then I would point out other things to them and say, okay, well, you wanted to drive more traffic, you wanted more conversion rate, you wanted this, this, and this. And then I would always measure that. And then I would always ask them questions and keep measuring on lifetime value. If you help calculate the lifetime value for your customer, they'll be happy all the time. They really will. And what that's doing is it's not measuring an ROI. ROI is good just for the project. But if you calculate the lifetime value, that's overall. And no one's really doing it other than you guys know. Yeah, so we would do free consultations with them and let them know what they need to do. When we got into the really hard stuff, and like on the highly application development, that we just could not just guesstimate. And we didn't want to charge by the hour. That's where we had to charge for. But we would meet with them several times. It wasn't like, you want to meet with us, we'll charge you. That wasn't it at all. We would do a lot of things. And the key to building a 15-minute proposal, too, is you're meeting with them, and you're going over. And the first couple meetings are where you win or lose it. It's not the last couple. If you rely on the last couple, you're already lost. It depends on the project and the things that we were doing. LegalZoom was maybe a day. That included wining and dining. So it wasn't very long. But a lot of times, too, what we did was we specialized. And so when you specialize, then people are coming to you. Even with, when we did Lotus, we did a lot of cool research on social media, so then we could take what we learned there and apply that to Porsche, and then get Porsche to kind of come to us and stuff like that. But specializing is the key. Yeah, go for it. Jump up down. So your question is you can only sell the value to the big companies? Yeah, and that's your guys' job, and that was my job, to show the value that we were going to provide. So you remember, if you go back to kind of the 3 I's, the issue, importance, impact, if you can leverage, like if someone they can make $1 million by doing your solution, I don't care if they don't have a budget right now, they'll find a budget in order to make $1 million. Or if someone's losing money really, really quick, and you've identified a solution that they believe that you can deliver, and you communicate that, they'll find the budget in order to do that. And that's with small companies. And probably the last 4 years we actually worked with big companies. The whole 8 years before that was all small business. That answer your question? It works, I promise you. I promise. Yes? So you're saying they're taking your ideas and not working with you? So right now I'm a one-man show. I produce all my content, and I want you guys to legally steal 80% of my content. And literally, I want you guys to have it. Because if I can provide you value, and that's why I'm up here, I want you guys to learn. I'm not trying to sell you anything. But over time, if I can help you out with that, you'll eventually come back. And it comes down to the qualification too, right? So you have to be laser focused on who you will work with and who you won't, and have those qualifications in there. And then if they fit that bill, I mean, I closed 80%. And when I would bring on salespeople, they were like, you don't close 80%. And when they got in there, Gene was sold for me. He closed 100% when he was with me. 100%. I shouldn't say that because you guys won't believe it. Should have told him he didn't get one deal, but we closed all the deals. I put my best foot forward every time. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna lose some,
Right.
unless you're Superman. Yeah, you're gonna lose some. But don't feel bad. They'll eventually come back. The key is nurturing them. Even though you lose them, like I use a great system. I use Infusionsoft, and so it just automates my whole business. And all I have to do is worry about setting it up at the very beginning, and then let it go. Sure. Yeah. So that's why I would bump it up 50%. But then also too, on the proposal, you have to get very detailed. And you only get detailed over time as you understand, you measure, and you do the experience. One of the things that we do on the proposal is we would define out what's not included. Right? Many of you don't do that. And that's also an upsell opportunity too. And also define laser focus on all the deliverables that's included for each major section. So we would have like creative technology marketing, and then we would go into the detail of that. And then we'd break out the deliverables for each, and then we'd say this is not included, and we'd have them sign off on it. Then when we were actually going into the project, we would go through what we developed a mission plan document. It's kind of a creative brief on steroids. And it would detail even more, and the client would sign off on that again. And we would have sign-off points on everything. So our scope brief, we had a little bit of scope brief, but we always assumed for it, right? So we assumed for like 10% on scope brief. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so listen up. This is probably one of the best tips that we implemented. And most of the time we would get paid 100% of the project before we were 30% done. How? Should I tease you a little bit? Like walk you around in the walls? It's all in the payment terms. And so we would charge 50% up front. We would charge a quarter at the halfway point, or, this is where it comes in, or at a certain date. You always wait on clients. You always have the clients come to you and say, I'm going to be your perfect client. I'll get you everything you need. This is my #1 project. I'm like, whatever, or this. And so we would charge a quarter at the halfway point, or at a certain date, whichever comes first. And I had that on the timeline. And we do the same thing at the completion. So the quarter would be at the end, or at a certain date. And so we were always waiting on the client. And then I also tell the client, if you don't get us the stuff when we want to engage, you're going to go in the queue. And you're going to go in the back of the line, and then we'll produce it. And then if you want to re-engage, we'll have to figure that out. And the other thing, if you're designing websites, which everybody is, we didn't start the design process until we got everything from the client. That's key. So copy was always a pain in the butt to get, where if it's a pain in the butt to get, there's your opportunity. You can outsource it, you can help them, do an upsell, and then get that. And then once you have everything laid out, now you have all the puzzles. Now the only things that can slow you up is them approving stuff. But then you have all the approval stuff. Did you have a question? Yeah. Yeah. He's asking about how to buy diapers. One tip I'll give you. Yeah, so he was saying he has 8 proposals he's waiting on right now. And he's like, well, how do you get them to move? And probably what the typical thing, probably most, and I even fell into this as well, is I would call him up and be like, hey, just want to check in with you. See how everything's going? Did you make a decision yet? And you might as well say, is my money ready yet when you do that? Because that's a begging strategy. You're saying, please, do work with me. And so versus where if you go through the issue, impact, importance, be like, hey, I know we had $1 million problem that you guys had. Is that still important to you? Have you figured out a solution? If you have, great, that's awesome. You're like, yeah, no, that's still $1 million problem. Oh, okay, how important is it to you? And you get them to move. The other tip, I'll give it to him. Or I'll give it to you guys, because I do a webinar on this as well. I do a little more tips if you go on. But, and it's free. Don't send a proposal. Don't send it. Yeah, he said present it. I would say, if I'm going to do a proposal for you, I want your commitment that I can present it to you. If they said no, they're like, okay, great. Thanks, see you. And I walk away. You have to be willing to walk away from clients in order to grow. We took on a lot of bad clients, and so that's why it comes down to kind of the qualification process of figuring out what's your perfect client. Because I mean, we've all been there. I mean, you got bills to pay, diapers to pay, got a ton of employees to pay, and you're like, I got to take on this project. I'm going to lose money on it, but it's a quick loan, and oh, it's always so painful. I should have just cleaned the diaper or something.
All of the talking about
no, I would just do a go-to meeting. Google Hangout, use some kind of technology, or even at least on the phone. And you're walking them through it. There's 1,000 other things you can do to make it even more effective. But if you start doing that, then your close rate's going to skyrocket. And then you have a chance in order to view their objections. Another tip thing too is don't be hide, all of you guys are probably pretty small like we used to be. Don't hide behind that. If that's an objection, you're trying to get a big brand like with Lotus, right? Or a big brand or whatever you're trying to get. Address it. Be like, I'm small. But that's the great thing about me. And just hit it off right away. And you'll close a lot.
Retainer?
Yeah.
The
Oh, I hated retainers. Now, I did have a $30,000 a month retainer with LegalZoom, so but that was nice. But I'll tell you why I hated it. My hourly rate, I showed you, used to be like $500 an hour. These guys would measure every damn hour I do. And I made $85 an hour, which was losing money. Because my fully burdened rate was 110. But I lost money because I knew I could leverage that client and the success we got to get other ones. And that was one of the reasons we sold too. So there's sometimes you lose money to make money, I guess. But I hated retainers. Because if you do a good job and you're delivering value, they're always going to come back to you. And then you don't have to discount your rate. Retainers are a discount. Hate it. Yeah. So we called it. So she said, "What if a client says I don't have a budget?" And I have this on the website too, if you want to see it. But we call it the budget buster. And so I'd always have some fun with them. And I would say, I love working with people that don't have a budget because I can spend $1 million of your dollars and you don't care what we do. And they'd be like, what? And they kind of look at me. And when Gene was selling with me, he saw this for the first time, he's like, this guy's a logo. And then I go, oh, so you do have a budget? And they'd be like, yeah, I guess I do. I'm like, oh, so 200 grand, 100 grand, 30 grand, 40? I'd just be like an auctioneer. Throwing out numbers. Until I'd see like some kind of twinkle in their eye when I said like 5 grand. And then I'd be like, oh, so around this range? And they'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, okay, great, you can go on. I was just kidding. But I got the budget 100% of the time. Yeah. All the time. Yeah, so one of the things to remember what you need to do in order to qualify, it's called BANT. It's called budget, authority, time, or need, and timing. So if they don't have the budget, and there's a thing that we do too, if they don't have a budget, you can do that, but there's other things that you can do as well. And then figure out, are they the authority? And there's questions that you can do for that. So like one of the questions we would say is, how does this affect your overall goal of the business? And if they can't answer that, they'd be like, oh, Jim Bob knows that. Like, great, let's go talk to Jim Bob, because you're not the person I need to talk to. And then I wouldn't waste my time. Because a lot of people just talk to the wrong person for too long, and they spend a lot of time. Anything else? Sure.
I find it's a snack something that I like to
It's fun. I guess my dad and mom. That's it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. You know, the biggest thing is I just want to help. And I want to produce the stuff that I wish I knew when I was doing it. Because it took me 12 years of fumbling around. And I probably lost millions and millions of dollars that I knew after the fact. So I'm just trying to put all that out there so you guys can legally steal it. Yeah, I'm back. Thank you.
So you mentioned that you would write detailed scope to manage clients' expectations. And you said that you would charge to scope it out and write everything out. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so his question was, when I was going through the scoping, would I detail everything I charged for? Yes. There's sometimes I didn't. If there was a deal I really wanted, then we would, maybe charge our cost. And so, I knew if we did that and we could get in the door, that we could just lock and load and really pull it out.
Kind of feedback on that. What's your process look like? Pre-sales to project management, how much was either side involved?
Yeah, they were always involved on both sides. We, even in the salespeople that we had with us, could do the work. And that was key. We just didn't have a salesperson that just sold it, sold the world, and then we were like, oh crap, how do I deliver this? It was always kind of that challenger, if we followed that model. But it all came down to the mission plan document that we had. And that took us years to morph over as well. And once we started doing that, figuring out what's the gotchas, and we did the debrief, that document kept growing and growing. So then our scope kept getting smaller and smaller. Now, we didn't figure out everything. There were still things that were like, oh man, how did they swing that by us? But then we never made the same mistake twice. So so like on projects that we knew we could deliver, like on a website, I knew we could do it in 50 hours. So I didn't have to go through a discovery. The only time I went through discovery was when there was heavy strategy or heavy development, where there was like, we had to do wireframes and mind maps and all of that. One of the things that we did is, does anybody know what mind mapping is? Right? So that was a great way where we got in the door, where we would go, hey, if you don't know what you want, let us just come in here and charge you $1,000 for the day. We'll get all your management, all the key people in the room, and we'll just map it out on the board. And we'll map out all the things, and then we'll come back and kind of review it with you. So it's that mentality of building that with them, and that was a great kind of tripwire in order to get into the other business. Anything else? Well, they would do the strategy, right? So they weren't doing the design, but they understood, you know, the process of designing a website, where they understood what had to happen on an SEO engagement, right? And you know, Gene did a great job on it, where you know, we would go in, and he taught us this, right? One funny story that he did, like VP of sales was beating him up. He's like, why are you wasting time on this one account? I'll buy you a Happy Meal if you get it. And literally it was like for a $2,000 engagement, and we were doing $100,000 projects. And he goes, well, let me just go back in one more time. And he goes, and this company was wound up spending, how much were they spending? $5,000 a month in retainer. And we said, why don't we charge you $1,000 just to make sure that they're doing it right, charge you an audit to give you confidence that they're doing it right. Obviously they weren't doing it right, and then we wound up getting a huge engagement from it. So, you know, the salespeople couldn't understand what needed to happen and the end results. So it was easier to do versus kind of the slimy salesperson coming in and going, I'll sell you this, and the world will, you know, rainbows will fly around you and stuff like that. I hope? Sure. Yeah, the biggest thing you need to think of is if you calculate the lifetime value for the average customers, then you're like, I'm delivering this much value. Like it was a big mindset for me to charge $5,000 to $10,000. I mean, literally we went, and then the next year I was like, I wonder if I can charge $25,000 for the same work. I was like, I can get $25,000, and we got it. And we're like, oh. And then I was like, can I charge 50, 60? And it was like, wow, this is awesome, we're just buying it. But there's all these other things that you need to do. But if the biggest thing that you can do in order to figure out what you need to charge is write down a number on a spreadsheet of what you want to make in a year. And then create a column for all the retainers if you do the discount work, and then all the projects. And then do like a 12-month schedule. And then put like a number of the average prices that you charge. And then figure out how many deals you need a month. And it will build out and be like, all right, I only need 2 deals at $10,000 a month. And then you can start figuring it out. And you're like, will that fit my lifestyle or what I need to do in order to hire the next employee? That's what I would do. Anything else? Sure. I am. I'd love to help you. I have an agency playbook and freelancer playbook on the website too, so reach out to me or talk to me after. So, 5 minutes? All right, 5 minutes. And then no more questions. All right.
Yes.
Yes, upsells, cross sells, everything. So a lot of people just focus on the core sale. The question was, how do you charge additional? Is that right? So Yeah, so we always gave away royalty-free, so we had a subscription to Getty, well, we changed it to Getty, was charging a lot, and iStock, and all of that, but we said, yeah, well, you can bump your prices up. Oh, yeah. Yeah, raise your rate. Oh, here's another thing, if you're too busy, you're not charging them. So raise your price. Remember, go to, if you're at 5,000, raise it 50%. I mean, that's what I did. Find a partner. That's what we did. We used Jenny Munn when she was writing copy. And so we had her come in, because we weren't content writers, and so we hired someone for that. But think of all the complementary services that you guys have to offer, and really just surround yourself with strategic partners. So my time is out, so I appreciate you guys taking the time to write us.